All right, so A Clockwork Orange by Anthony Burgess came out in 1962. Anthony Burgess, I believe he was born in 1917, and I think he lived until the 90s, maybe the 2000s. He might have lived little longer. I'm used to hearing about authors who live short lives, and for various health reasons as well. But yeah, so Clockwork Orange, very it was a tough read. I was definitely adamant, even though I had it on my bookshelf for quite a while. I had seen the movie first, and that's probably the way I usually kind of go about things, is seeing the movie first, and then I'm curious enough to pick up the book later and to kind of get an idea. But yeah, this the movie I probably saw maybe like 8 9 years ago. Same thing with a lot of other Kubrick movies that I saw as well. So I'm probably gonna have to rewatch it. But yeah, I have seen scenes of it again, kind of after kind of my reading, kind of invigorated my interest in the after reading the novel. So I watched some scenes again to kind of get a sense of like how accurate the or how accurate the movie really was. And according to the intro, um, by Burgess was talking in the prologue, I guess. He was saying that the introduction, that there was meant to be like 22 chapters, and that was supposed to go through. Whereas in the film, I think they took kind of didn't stay true to those 22 kind of divided chapters. I think or episodes. So yeah, I think he said that kind of had a cyclical kind of almost Dante's Inferno uh, impression to it, and I think I get what he means. Alex, the main character, Alex DeLarge, is a 15-year-old. I did not know that the whole time. I was thinking he was like 18 or like 17, 18, I think. Turns out he was like a little bit younger than I thought. And he is a kind of something of a charming leader of a gang of youths who are kind of his friends, but they kind of there's definitely like different power grabs and stuff between them that make it a little bit more like he's definitely the leader. Like there's a the dynamic is that he's definitely their leader, but there's also kind of a um, that's tenuous at times. And has a level of uh, charisma to him. He has a intelligent kind of sophisticated, very sensible kind of cultured soul. You would say, but also extremely twisted as well. He and these this juxtaposition between high art and like low art profanity is put on full display at times, and in times it's like kind of hard to read. But yeah, um, Anthony Burgess writes Alex DeLarge in a way that's he's meant to um, you're meant to kind of see, not necessarily emphasize with him because he's like there's but you're kind of meant to see at least his kind of his point of view, like what it's like in his head, and it's definitely obviously written in first person, so you get the whole swing of the lingo and this the language that's used is called the Nadsat language, and it's basically a semi kind of distant, possibly near future kind of almost like kind of version of reality where all like the states are combined in a way where there's the Slavic kind of states have um and they have a say on what the language is. So there's like a lot of influence of the words of like Slavic of the Russian language of as well. So where you have a lot of words like, let me just look at the appendix here. There's I had to, if I would have said one thing, if I would have done one thing before reading the book, I probably would have looked at the appendix first, because I don't know if my version actually has one. But you can easily just look up the Clockwork Orange book appendix or something like that, and you'll probably find something there online. There's a plethora of different databases online that you could of people who have um, taken the time to translate all these words. So you have words like babuchka, which means old woman, and then badiwad, which means bad, and bezumi, which means mad or crazy, and then biblio means library, and stuff like uh, cantoria means office. Chelovek means person, and some of those kind of were lost to me. I had to kind of stop and I had to look up the word when I was reading it. Um, but yeah, so Alex is leading this violent gang of thugs, and they partake in. They basically all get together in a. I mean, anybody who's like even heard of the book kind of get to see, or even just seen parts of the movie. Knows probably kind of the gist of it, but I'm just gonna kind of summarize it anyway, succinctly as possible. Yeah, they all get together and they drink what's called milk plus, and it's called Moloko, so that's the Russian word for milk. It's also the name of a band too. It's Molokos, and I think it's a British. No, it's actually Irish. I think. I haven't heard much of their stuff, but I do what I have heard. I do like, but yeah. Um, but yeah, from Moloko means milk, and milk plus I think they is kind of the other kind of in phrase used, and it basically is it's like this spiked kind of drug. It's like a version of a kind of high that you get. And it's like a mix between, and it's not like this. It's almost like the inverse of alcohol because you'd expect if it was just alcohol, if it was just booze, you'd expect it would just make them kind of mollified and soporific and or languid. Pretty much, it would probably have the opposite effect. But with this milk plus makes them it both very very horny and very very violent. They just want to like go out and beat old women up and then just like bash people's heads, and it's really awful. Like he does not shy away from these descriptions, and it's pretty, but at the same time, it's uh cleft against this other very descriptive, vivid, um, uh, scenes of like of an appreciation of music and how he Burgess talks about Alex's like great interest in Beethoven, and, Ludwig V, and how much appreciation he has for him, and he's like talking about like how exactly like on this one sonata or this, and which also I should have pointed out earlier is that Burgess himself is actually a composer, um, from what I heard, and he's also I think he might have started out as a composer first, and then he kind of went into writing a little bit later in life. I could be wrong, but I think this is his debut novel. But yeah, so I think he definitely you can see that kind of composer kind of mindset in his the way he describes music in this. There's also he also taught, I think at some point, uh, either he taught or he studied deeply language as well, and language as just a medium and as a source of um, I don't know. I think he as like a recreational kind of thing. He has, but he definitely you can see those two things as like language and like music show up a lot in this model. It's very, um, yeah. So they all get really drunk on this milk plus, and yeah, they just go like just complete like chaos, violence, and yeah. So there's I think three main episodes in which they all commit crimes of. One of them is like against a rivaling gang, which you see in the movie, and yeah, that's I can't really say it on like the way that obviously nobody can outdo Malcolm McDowell's like iconic role as that as DeLarge, but like the way he says like thou swiveling swill, like thou can't remember what he said. It was like thou vermin swiveling swill, that can't remember what he said, but the way he talks is like kind of in a pronounced kind of like it's very it's like a again the high art, the profane and the sacred kind of mixed together in a kind of which you would think it would get old after a while, and sometimes it does get tiring, but at a certain point, yeah, these um they break into a house, and one of the one occasion is which is uh kind of comes back to haunt him later, is Alex ends up I think at some point he already has some tensions with the gang. There's three other guys in the gang, I, and uh, they're all kind of plotting against him. And so the next time they kind of break into a house, and they're in the cat lady's house, and it's Alex is the main one to kind of go in there and kind of do the deed, I guess, as he calls it, the old in and out. He just kind of goes in there and then basically just kind of beats her brains in. And in the movie, it's obviously with like this giant phallic thing, and it's just like very. I mean, it's both weirdly funny, as a lot of people would probably agree, but also very very disturbing as well. Like you just get a sense that after he does that, the way he kind of redacts himself, or kind of just kind of looks like, oh, like what like he finally like some sense hits into his head. And but yeah, so he leaves the house, and the gang suddenly, the rest of his kind of droogs turn on him, and they throw the milk plus in his eyes, and he's like kind of blinds him temporarily. um I guess because it's pretty sensitive stuff, and they throw him, and they call the police on him, and they get him arrested, and so they turn on him obviously. And they at this point, Alex is just thrown in jail, and he's in prison. He's given there's he's already kind of made kind of the fool of a kind of butt end of a joke in some senses. And there's a uh, figure there, a religious figure, kind of a father, like I don't know if he's a vicar, I can't remember, but one of the priests is there, is like very, there's a kind of an orthodox kind of religion that's persists in this kind of version of reality in the future. And the way Burgess imagines it is that there's like this dogmatic kind of like just like do as we say, not as we do kind of attitude, I think. And there's a lot of this corruption obviously going on, and he kind of ties that in as in a kind of a social kind of commentary, I guess. Because this was partially based and rooted in real life experiences of his own, of Burgess's own travels in Europe. I believe it was in, particularly in Russia. I think he was in Moscow, and that's where he kind of picked up on the whole Slavic kind of language in the phrases. Uh, and he noticed that there's a gang of like young people in there, kind of causing trouble in one of the bars, I think. So, the gang of these people that were, I think they were doing something to the window. I can't remember. They were I can't remember, but yeah, they were causing a ruckus, and that kind of stuck with him, I guess, because they were the way they acted was so like it just like left an impression on him. And I'm you know but yeah, so Alex is in jail at this point, and then they end up using what's called the Ludovico technique, because they offer him a proposition. They either they can heal him with this new technique, they can cure him of crime, and they can cure his sick, disgusting mind, and they could make him a healthy member of society again by basically taping his eyes. And this is where the movie gets pretty right, I think. And they actually did the pretty faithful, I'd say. But in the books, like the way he describes it, the way um, Alex describes his own tortures, like they showed all these horrible footage, and they'd glue his eyes wide, the eyelids up, like basically stuck open, and then he'd be forced against his will to watch for hours and hours, and he'd be throwing up, just like completely like sick to his stomach. And then yeah, it basically affects him. It like kind of makes him all this footage of like murder and all that. And then it's also, but not only that, because at first you would think he would be, the first time he's like kind of like, oh, I can handle this, because he's seen murder, he's obviously murder, he's killed himself, so he's like quite violently. And yeah, so, but eventually it starts to get into his head that they start combining the thing he loves most, which is classical music, and they start playing Beethoven and all this like Bach, and his all this Baroque and classical kind of stuff together, combined with that violent footage, like starts to really really mess with his brain. So that this kind of pinnacle of the novel is when he's like let out of, finally, after the process, the Ludovico technique is actually successful. He's like shown a woman, and he's like tries out, see like what they sees what happens when he approaches her, and they like beat him up again. That's obviously that's in the movie as well. So yeah, there's after that he is finally let loose and he's allowed back home. But the only thing is that his own home and his parents, his parents had a kind of weirdly kind of they were kind of ignorant of his stuff, or either maybe slightly suspicious, but they never quite caught on to his behavior. But now that they've kind of welcomed him back home, but there's like a great awkwardness because there's another guy there, maybe a little bit older than him. I can't remember his name, but this guy kind of is his replacement basically. He's is like kind of almost a stand-in kind of son for him, because he's like gone off, and he's like obviously this is he's basically a house tenant. So he's just a house tenant that took Alex's room when he was gone. I guess his parents were just like, like, well, we might as well make the most of his space and stuff. So he's like there's a lot of tension between those, Alex and this guy. And the guy basically thinks like that Alex was like a horrible son. He's like, they should disown you. You're horrible. You're never gonna change and stuff like that. So um, there's a yeah at this point. So um, Alex is like goes out, and then there's a he's beaten up by the police too on different occasions, and then he shows up at the another character by the name of Alex, who's an older guy that is a writer, and he's writing what's called the Clockwork Orange. And the Clockwork Orange is just his kind of social commentary, his great kind of this bile and disgust that he has for it's a very kind of a moral comeuppance against them, of what he feels should be this kind of reaction against the corrupt government, or what he feels to be the corrupt government. So he's like writing this out, and then he sees Alex out in the streets, as begging to be let in. Now, truly, it's the irony, is the kind of tragic irony, I guess, is that um, after using that kind of excuse, kind of prank, kind of impish way of like wheedling himself into these people's homes to to beat them to death. Now he's the one being beaten to death, using that unironically. So um, with no facade or anything. So yeah, that's a kind of it's very clever the way that's written, I'd say. It only just kind of occurred to me how now that I said it out loud. But yeah, so Alex is taken into the older Alex is the writer, and he's writing a Clockwork Orange, and he's like, the Clockwork Orange is basically uh, I think when it comes down to it, means something that has like it's like a there's like a an orange juxtaposed. So those two things kind of seem opposite, where there's like a mechanism behind laying behind the like someone's like eye, for example, but like um with like a clockwork is a direct kind of programmed thing that has an analog, forward and backward kind of thing, and then an orange is just a more of a kind of organic, but uh, but imperfect kind of nature's kind of thing, So that those two kind of juxtapose kind of sounds like it's like a very interesting kind of concept in and of itself. But yeah, so I'm gonna try to wrap this up in a little bit, but yeah, so Alex is yeah, he's at the writer's house, and he's like, the movie made him to be a little bit more outraged than I think the book. I think in the book, but there are definitely like line for line dialogue of like there's almost like straight that the movie got pretty darn accurately, I'd say. So uh, after that, he's basically the gang kind of I think in the movie they were I know that they were dressed themselves up as cops, and they kind of beat him up again and to get one back up on him. And yeah, he's just kind of like basically throughout ever since the inception of when Alex is brought into to corrections facility, and corrected for his criminal behavior. He's basically like warped and twisted and beaten and abused and psychologically just like screwed with, misaligned, until he's a shell of a person. And he's like, and at the end, there's a kind of, this is where the part I kind of was most confused about, was whether or not the arc of Alex Large, he starts about, talking about growing up, at the very end. He's like, he's just turned what 17, 18 near the end of the novel by the time it's all over with. So great, like a great deal of time has happened in the space between, and he talks about like, oh yeah, well Beethoven would have composed his, or Mozart would have composed his first piece by for like symphony by 16, and and I'm already 2 years older than that, so I should probably start kind of taking things more seriously. So he does have a definite moment of self-awareness, but in the movie it made it seem out to be like at the end he was still having fantasies and having these unrequited kind of criminal fantasies, but he wasn't, ultimately he wasn't fully changed, like he was pretty much the same, yet there, like he was like not ready to go out and just like and just like engage in the same stuff again. But I think in the book it makes it out to be like, I think he's matured a little bit more, but I'm not too sure about that. um but yeah, just to give an example of the only criticism I've heard this of other people too is that the Nadzak language gets a little clunky at times, pretty clunky at times, in the way that Alex talks with all these uh, what's the word, uh, jargon, like this kind of jargon, and these different neologisms and stuff, like um, he uses them. He implements these weird kind of clunky Burgess, that is, in a way that makes it seem like it seems like that, almost as if there's spelling errors and when there isn't. And it's like, but you also have to kind of occupy this headspace of Alex wrote the whole thing, so it's like you're kind of, once you get used to that, if you do get used to it, which it's not for everybody. I mean, the depictions of rape, I think, like in the book, I think were a lot uh, more uncomfortable, I think, than the movie. They kind of made it seem like a little bit like, almost like they kind of like rushed through it a little bit and made it, they kind of but in the book, it's like, yeah, it's like, I definitely say, if you're if you have a thin skin, I do kind of have a thin skin too. I mean, the Story of the Eye by George Bataille was definitely not like, though I do admire him as a thinker and a philosopher and writer, artist, whatever. I do not I do not like, I do not prefer that kind of like straight kind of like circumstance. And I would say that's actually not quite the Burgess actually masks the violence with enough of the jargon and the this vivid kind of descriptions, that you almost, it's like everything is like clunked and like in a stew of motley kind of thing, combination, that you really don't think too much about it. I think that's what I kind of got. It's like the to come to think of it, like, yeah, these I would, like, definitely trigger warning. But I just, to each their own, I guess. But yeah, that's all I have for, yeah, Clockwork Orange, and you have watching.